individuals because even though they try to shut us down, it's very important in these times to continue on the celebrations and continue on taking up space and expanding our voices, especially during these hard times. So thank you everybody and welcome. We would like to walk you through a quick, background. Starting off with a timeline of women's rights. So one of the first rights that we were granted was the right to vote. Although in 1920 this right was given to women, it excluded women of color, and it wasn't until 1965 that women of color were granted the right to vote, or in 1972, where discrimination based on race and sex was deemed illegal in the workplace and in education. And in 1963 is when there was an Equal Pay Act for women to get the equal pay that men got as well. Although that did as well also exclude women of color, because currently, compared to a white man, Latino women earn 57 cents for each dollar earned by white men, and black women earn about 64 cents for every dollar earned by white men. And indigenous women earn 60 cents for every dollar earned by a white man. So the disparities are still pretty wide, but we're moving forward to close those in the future. There are some very common ones. So workplace inequality, gender pay gap, workplace harassment, job discrimination, reproductive health restrictions, medical bias, increased rates of chronic illness, maternal mortality, school-to-prison pipeline, targeted violence, and harsher sentencing are all things that women go through in the systems here in the United States and obviously everywhere in the world. But we would like to focus on these for our area. Job discrimination is mostly faced by women of color due to a hiring bias, which means that we're less likely to be promoted to leadership positions just because of our background, and we're deemed, I guess, unable to do the job, even if we're more than qualified and even have more than the required or listed talents that we need, but yet, our jobs will still be passed on to other people. Occupational segregation is also very common, where many overrepresented in low-wage, unstable jobs with fewer benefits and protections. So it means that we're doing more work for less pay. We don't get insurance, perhaps in some cases. We don't get paid leave. A lot of jobs, a lot of women of color face working overtime without the overtime pay. There's a lot of healthcare disparities. So there's medical biases that we go through, limited access to quality healthcare. I don't know if anyone in this room has ever been through a situation where you go to the doctor and you have to kind of fight whoever is there to get the attention because you know that there's something wrong with your body, there's something that doesn't feel right, and then the doctor, whoever, will be like, oh no, you're okay, it's just a headache. How many of you guys in the audience here have gone through that at some point in their life? Very unfortunate, but I believe that almost every woman has gone through that, where we're told something that we know is not right, yet our surroundings try to tell us that no, it's not like that. You're just going insane, or it's just you being dramatic, or you're just feeling that way. But it's not. So it's important to remember that what you feel and what you're experiencing is your reality. So don't let people change your mind when you know something is not right. We also face the school-to-prison pipeline, which is common for Black, Indigenous, and brown girls, where we face higher suspension and expulsion rates than other groups of girls that exhibit the same behaviors, or we experience harsher consequences consequences for things that kind of don't make sense. For example, let's say there's a group of girls that is talking, and then a teacher comes by, and then she will send the brown girl in that group to detention, and then the other girls will get left free. That will lead to higher dropout rates in high school, and the Latino community is actually the one with the highest dropout rate here in the United States due to that targeting and due to that kind of harassment, in other words, that we face in schools. We also have a higher risk of violence, which, for example, Indigenous women experience the highest rates of sexual violence and domestic abuse alongside Black and Latina women who experience a lot of partner violence and were less likely to receive support from our surroundings. We have a lot of cases where women go missing or they go murdered, and where they disappear at alarmingly high rates, yet our cases are rarely closed or are often ignored by law enforcement. And the same goes for harsher sentencing, that if we're in court, our sentences will be higher or they will affect us more. We also have we're very underrepresentation in leadership, and we're stereotyped a lot, but that is today's main point, that no matter all of these things that we go through, we can still move forward and we can still make it. We just need to make sure that, we stay true to ourselves and what we believe is right. Today we have 3 guest speakers with us. Dr. Teresa Jones, who is originally from New York but spent 14 years in Los Angeles before moving home to Bremerton for the first time in 1978. Her work experience in Kitsap County began as an elementary school teacher. Eventually, a move to Seattle led her to working as the assistant director for a nonprofit organization, a chemical dependency counselor, a home-based services counselor, and an organizational trainer. Upon returning to graduate school, Dr. Teresa Jones received a Master's of Social Work and a PhD degree from the University of Washington School of Social Work. We also have here today Whitney Tatum. Whitney Tatum is a Palestinian American and the founder of Moxie Entrepreneurial Support Services, helping small business owners and nonprofit leaders document policies and procedures for long-term success. Her journey began at Dairy Queen at 15, followed by earning a business degree and working in corporate America before shifting gears to become a yoga teacher and a personal trainer. At 29, she joined the Peace Corps, spending 5 years in Central and South America supporting Indigenous community. She later bought, grew, and sold 2 businesses in Arizona before moving to Washington in 2022 to launch Moxie. Our final guest speaker for today is Gabriela Ituarte. Gabriela Ituarte, sitting right here in the middle. Please raise your hand. She is the founder, this is her nonprofit. She's the founder of the nonprofit We Are Better Together Foundation, and she began her journey as a clinical psychologist in Mexico. She advocates for the removal of barriers that hinders inclusive access and that ensures the Latino community receives the support needed to navigate essential services. She collaborates with local businesses, educational institutions, and community organizations to implement inclusive practices and create integrated, welcoming environments for diverse individuals. She spends her time advocating for systematic change by working with policymakers, organizations, and community leaders to reform policies and develop initiatives that remove barriers so that we can increase inclusive opportunities in education, the workplace, and community services. Please can we have a round of applause for our guest speakers. We will be starting here with Dr. Teresa Jones. How are you? I'm very good as well. For the first question that we have for you guys today is, what is the biggest misconception that was made about you during your career?
Thank you, Angela. I'm glad to be here with everybody. Actually, Angela alluded to the thing that I thought about to answer this question, is that I've been in several situations, primarily in higher ed, where despite a very, very rigorous hiring process, and an organization that decided, oh, you qualify, so there, you got the job. There are still individuals in that workspace that either didn't believe I belonged there, questioned the fact that I was there, and somehow thought that I had either cheated the system somehow to get there, or had this job and didn't deserve it. So it was one of those situations where you probably have heard that no matter how hard you can work twice as hard, but people will still think half as much of you. So, you come into academic spaces, with a lot of work experience because you have to, with a master's degree because you have to, with a PhD because you have to. And my PhD looked just like theirs, but still, there was something that people thought that, I'm not sure if Teresa really belongs here. So that sense that no matter what you do, you're never really qualified enough. And that sense that people had of me that, okay, you're here, but we're going to hunt until we find out the reason why you shouldn't be here. That they were assuming and pretty sure that I was unqualified. Proven wrong, but still having to go through that. Just kind of a pain in the butt. Yeah, and it happens all the time. All the time. Oh my goodness.
Hi everybody, it's nice to be here. For me, I would guess just by being born a woman, that was like presuming competence, right? When I was going through psychology, it was you're young, right? You're young and passionate, so that doesn't count. Not intellectual enough, right? Because of course the teachers that we would have would be men, mostly. And then when I was older, it was, oh, you're getting older, so now you're not competent enough, right? Then I moved to the United States almost 20 years ago, and it's, oh, now you're Mexican, right? So you're Latina, and so now you're not competent enough. So I think as we move forward, there's always all this doubt about how competent you're going to be. Just because you were born a woman, right? Because we're not supposed to be intellectual enough or good enough, like Dr. Jones was saying, or we're always going to have that scrutiny on us, right? And this has been all my career, different factors that I mentioned, right? Like, oh yeah, you don't speak the language very well, or there's always that raising eyebrow, oh yeah, it's a woman, right? But I think it's just part of the system, right? Doesn't mean that the system is right, but it's part of it.
I'm happy to be here as well. Come on in if you want to come listen to Women Who Inspire. Yes, I completely agree with Dr. Jones and Gabriela. For me, it was a lot based on my looks. And a lot of people assume that I slipped my way to the job that I got, especially as I started to kind of climb, the career ladder. Just kind of assuming like, oh, you're pretty, but you're not smart, was a big thing I heard a lot. Oh, you must have gotten this because, they like how you look. And so for me, it was people just kind of constantly doubting my skills and ability, and so that affected me. When I was younger, I would stress out every single day, even on what to wear to work, because I wanted people to respect me for me, not wearing flattering things or, those kinds of things. So for me, it was, it's still that continuing questioning of your competence. And there's just so many layers as a woman, as a brown woman, as, someone maybe not born here, just all the things. And now, as things progress in our climate, transgender people and those kinds of situations, non-binary people, having those sort of thoughts of, you're not competent because you're not a white male. You're not what the status quo has been for history. So, you just don't know as much. So that was a struggle throughout my career. That's why I started my own business, because I know I'm smart.
The second question that we have today is, have you ever felt like an imposter in your own success? And if so, how did you get over that feeling that it wasn't you?
I had to really think about this one. And I realized this morning about 8:15 that what I was struggling is a distinction between feeling insecure and feeling like an imposter. And I realized, at least for me, that there's a big difference. I think as I've gone to school and gotten jobs and gotten bigger jobs along the way, that I have often felt insecure, but that's my own thing, about, okay, can I do this? Am I gonna be okay? Am I gonna look stupid on, when I'm teaching? Those kinds of things. That's me questioning me. But there is one particular incident that I remember when I was on the faculty at Michigan State, and I had just got my PhD, UW, went off to Michigan, and the very first class that I taught was in a lecture hall about twice the size of this. It was Introduction to Social Work, and every seat in the lecture hall was full. So there's probably about 250 students. And I walk in, and all these students, I think, okay, I'm supposed to teach these people something. And the way the class was set up, we had a lecture, and then the class broke up into discussion groups that were led by a couple of other faculty people who've been at the school for a long, long time. And I saw, because they attended the lecture so that they knew what I talked about, they knew what to do in the little breakout sessions. But I saw from the looks on their faces and heard, through the grapevine, and then they were talking to me also afterwards about, well, you should do this and you shouldn't do that, and I don't know, and we need to improve, and things have to blah, 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 blah. And at that point, I thought, okay, I made a big mistake. I'm not supposed to be an assistant professor at Michigan State University School of Social Work because of what they thought, which was different from my own insecurity. So I questioned a lot. I was packing my bags in my head. I'm going back to Washington because this is not going well. Then I realized, all right, Teresa, whose opinion really makes a difference to you? And I realized it was two, my own and the students. I never heard from one of the students that they thought what I was doing was wrong. And in fact, they loved the class. And so I realized, all right, I have to focus on what's real important. And what's real important is, am I doing the best that I can for these 250 students in this gigantic lecture hall at this place where I feel nervous every time I'm in the classroom, but again, that's me. And is this what the students are getting from me, and they're telling me, this is great, enjoy the lecture, are you teaching another class next semester? Okay, does that matter? When those two guys in the back row who were determined to make me feel like I didn't belong. So I realized, again, had the imposter feeling for a second, but then realized that I could overcome that by really focusing on whose opinion was important and who really didn't matter in the long run, because they let me teach the class, not them.
I know, yeah. Thank you, Whitney. I do want to piggyback though on what Dr. Jones said about the difference between the imposter, feeling like an imposter, and feeling self-doubt. For me, feeling as an imposter comes from a place of not being worthy, and doubt comes from a place of being fearful. I don't think I've ever felt like an imposter, because I know I deserved every single thing that I've achieved in my life. Have I been fearful and self-doubting? Yes. When I studied 5 years of clinical psychology, I was scared through the whole career? What if I send somebody else to the doctor instead of helping them? Like, what if I screw it up for them the rest of my life?